Hey everybody, welcome back to the Midnight Paint Body Channel. On this video, I'm going to give my crew a budget of $70,000 and 7 days to get this car ready for the big auction, or we're going to lose the shop. No, that's not real. Probably going to fix the brakes. So, as you just saw, I brought it in the shop the right way. Tires are still hot. So, fuel wasn't really keeping up. That seems to be an issue with my cars. But I'm sure that's just a tuning issue, or that carburetor that I rebuilt myself. So, it's probably not right. But anyway, if you're not familiar with the 78 Trans Am Revival car, this is a 404-speed 78 Trans Am that I bought a while back, and we've done a few videos just playing around, getting it running, did a tune-up, rebuilt the carburetor, put some mufflers on it, but it still has no brakes. It has a blown-out brake line, so I finally have all the stuff to repair that. So, let's see. Oh no, there's still a few burnouts left in those tires. We're not done with them yet. Oh yeah, they're still good. They are still good. Okay. So yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to do today. I just figured I would get this thing inside because it's about 97 million degrees out. It's summer now, and it's just too frickin' hot for me. But it's pretty cool in here. So yeah, I've been kind of wanting to get a bay in the shop here where I can actually jack it up and not have to keep moving it in and out. I'm kind of getting to the end of some big jobs. But this little Dodge Dart here, might have a little video or two coming up on it. It's a customer vehicle. And then you might have seen a couple of the rust repair videos I did on this 96 Dodge I'm doing for a customer. So it's just on the last legs. It's Sunday now, so I plan on actually having it finished up and ready to get back to the customer probably tomorrow or Tuesday. So anyway, like I say, I don't know how much I'll do today, but I'm going to get this thing up on jack stands. We'll start surveying how much of that brake line we need to replace. And yeah, we'll go from there. So we'll see you shortly. So we got her up in the air on some jack stands, so I figure we'll get the wheels off and kind of see what we're working with. Here's a pro tip for you guys, just so things are faster. Only use 3 lug nuts, because then it's less work to take the wheel off. And it's lightweight, so you don't have all that extra weight of having 5 lug nuts. Makes her faster in the quarter mile. First inspection is that I think my battery's leaking. Ooh, whoa, look at how crusty that is. Nice. Either that or this used to be a smuggling car and the stash bag broke open, I'm not sure. Well now, the rotors look like brand new. Huh, actually the pads look really good. I have no idea if these calipers are going to be any good. Even that rubber brake hose looks just fine. We might change it anyway, but... So I did pick up some wheel bearings. We could probably repack these ones. But for 30 bucks for a set of wheel bearings, we'll probably change those. I'll machine the rotors. I do own a brake lathe, so it's kind of nice. It's funny, no one turns rotors anymore. And I bought that complete brake lathe with all the tooling and everything for like 200 bucks. It's worth it for me just for my own junk. And, help buddies out or whatever is cool. So, we know if you haven't watched the previous videos that there is a brake line blown out right underneath the driver's floor there. So that's going to be the first thing to get fixed. And we'll kind of see what else this brake system is going to need. Now I would fully expect it's going to need a master cylinder and wheel cylinders. But when I step on the brake pedal, I can actually hear it pushing out of that broken brake line. So that tells me that master cylinder might still be functional. Oh, that was finger tight. Yeah, still good. Oh yeah, there's something. It looks like this sway bar, what would you call that? A sway bar connector, sway bar bracket. Anyway, this piece going from the body to the sway bar is actually broken right off of that mount there. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to see if we can replace that guy, or if I can get that off of there. I might even be able to just weld it. I mean, good enough for what we're doing here. Get that drum off. Yep, quite a ridge on those ones. And there's another little tip for you guys when you put a car on jack stands. I did this already, but I always give them a good shake. Make sure she's not falling off. Now, I'm not really getting underneath this car up on the stands, but you can never be too careful with them up on stands like that. I mean, I only have one good set of big stands. I've got these kind of smaller, cheesy ones in the back, which, you know, not the best. I wouldn't go crawling around underneath this thing without blocking it up better. Fortunately, I have a brake drum removal tool right there. So these will usually, as your brake shoes wear into the drum, they'll leave a groove on the inside. That's why it won't pull off usually, because it doesn't want to go over that groove. So we can probably get into the adjuster if it's not seized and move the shoes in so the drum will come off. Anyway, no point recording that. I'll come back to this when we get the drum off. So, a couple times around with the persuader there. Yeah. You know, you can see where it was sitting with the water in the bottom, but these drums are actually in really good shape. A little bit grooved, but nice and thick. So they haven't been machined a bunch of times. So I think there's plenty left there to throw these on the brake lathe and clean them up. These will be good. Yeah, brake shoes are probably 50–60%. But you can see, I don't know if you happen to know drum brake stuff. I mean, these are pretty simple. But if you have a look in here, all the springs and everything's accounted for. Nothing's fallen off. Everything's dry, so the wheel seal, or the axle seal, sorry, is sealing. It's not leaking. These wheel cylinders, I don't really expect them to come back to life, but once we start pushing some fluid into them, they might start leaking. But man, everything's dry. So, to me, everything there looks salvageable. Once we get into that brake line, get that brake line changed, I'll probably pull everything off, clean everything up, lube up the adjusters, make sure everything's working. I might just buy some wheel cylinders ahead of time because we're probably going to need them. But then, get looking around in here, the rest, like the subframe of the car, where a lot of these get rusty. Like it's actually, all the parts that really matter are solid. I don't see any real issues. I mean, obviously the body's rusty, the floor is rusty. You stand back from this car, it looks pretty good, but like you look at this area here, that having that much bubbling tells me this is all full of body filler and it's all rusting behind. So But that's okay. We're not getting into that stuff. We're just trying to get this car running and driving. And I did climb under there before. Tag on the differential. It doesn't have the gear ratio on it, but it does just say limited slip, oil only, or whatever it says on there. So we know it's for sure a posi. I'm not sure what these cars came with. I'm guessing probably like a 336 or 342, something like that, being a 4-speed car. So yeah, I got that apart so far. I don't know if I'll get much more on this today. I've got some things to do, but I might come back later this evening. We'll turn the camera back on and start tackling that brake line. All right, we're back to the Trans Am. I think it's been like a week since I filmed the intro on this one. I was going to get started on the brakes, but I've been so darn busy that I just haven't been able to get back on it. But what we talked about before was that we need to repair or replace a brake line. Now I showed you guys in a past video this thing was hit. Obviously took a little whack in the rocker. I folded this back, but so you can see that's where the brake line leak is. So it probably got hit right across there. This fuel line's actually kind of crushed too, which I should probably address. But I'm going to start with this brake line. We're going to see if we can make one. So there's a coupler up here, so I'm going to unbolt it, follow it down, see how far we need to go. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll have another look. So I took that brake line off back to where it connects back there. So this line leads up to the master cylinder, but I cleaned off a bit of that sleeving and cleaned up the line a little bit, and it looks like we have good brake line right here. Okay, you can tell me in the comments if I'm a dumbass, but I don't know. I bought a double flare kit, something I haven't done before, but I just thought we would try putting a sleeve nut on here and flaring this old line and just making a new line from here back to there. So if that doesn't work, we'll just make a line all the way up to the master cylinder, but we'll give this a shot. So here's what I've got. Cheapy double flare kit, and this brake line kit I bought off of Amazon, but I guess it came with all the tube nuts, but no couplers. I guess I will need coupler to put two brake lines together if I'm going to make a new line and connect to that one. So I think quick run to the auto parts store, because I don't really want to go all the way to the master if I don't have to. But whatever, this will be a learning exercise anyway. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Glasses. Well, I'm back, and my auto parts store didn't have any 3/8 tube nuts or connectors for them, unions. So, anyway, I guess we'll just go right to the master, which was probably the better idea anyway. Alright, so here's where we're at now. We're going to try and get this brake line off here at the master. So my brake line wrenches are kind of cheap and crappy. I think we'll just give her warm her up a little bit. Cheap wrench, get on this wrench and sucker out. Done asking nicely. Oh, ow. I think that did her. All right. So, there is bad brake line out. Now, let's start making a new one. Alright, so I've got the brake line run up here to where we need it. I'm just going to put a fresh cut on here just in case I got any dirt or anything in the end. There we go. If you've done this before and you know how to do it, then skip ahead because this is probably boring. But if you haven't done it, maybe you can learn along with me. Prepare tubing. Deburr. Chamfer the outer edge. Didn't do that. You just do that with a piece of 100 grit sandpaper. All right, 3/16. Okay, so I think we're supposed to do that guy first. Wait a minute. Adapter out. All right, let's have a look at what we've accomplished here. So we have created a double flare. It's a little sharp bit there. I'll sand that off. If you're an expert at this, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm learning. Son of a... Yeah, man, that looks good to me. This stuff seems to bend pretty darn easy. do have a tool for bending the brake line, but I actually don't think it's going to be necessary. Nice, that's one end maybe done. Alright, so back under the car. So, what we need to do now is to follow this fuel line. Right. Well, that looks okay to me. Slide this nut back down here and get this line hooked up. So, brake line is hooked up on both ends, so I'm just going to go around and put it back in some clamps. I'm actually going to leave this one loose because I do want to come back and I'm going to cut a section out of this fuel line that's squished. That probably is the fuel starvation problem I was having doing donuts. No, we can't have starvation and donuts in the same sentence, so I better come back and fix that. So I just remembered I started on the last video, if you didn't watch it, said we're going to keep a tally of what I've been spending on this car. So that brake line kit, that brass brake line with all the flare nuts that came with it, was like 25 bucks, I think, on Amazon. And then the flare kit, that double flare kit I bought, I have to double check, but I think it was $70, so I'm just going to write 70 on there. It actually might have been a little less, but that's okay. Now, like I always say, cheap tools are okay for, guys like me. I don't do brakes, or I don't do brake lines all the time. If I was doing that for a living, I would probably opt for good quality parts or good quality tools over cheapy Amazon stuff, but for just doing this, I'm sure it's going to be just fine. So anyway, brake line is in. I've just kind of left it loose, but I think we're ready. We can dump a little brake fluid in there and just see what happens. Oh, moly, that's a tight one. Well, would you look at that? So yeah, the front reservoir is still full of fluid. It's probably kind of nasty, but I'm just going to give that pedal a little push and see what's going to go on in there. Drinking some up? No, I guess not, eh? Well, I'm going to see if I can get the bleeders cracked on the back end. And yeah, fool around a little bit, see if we can get some brakes happening. Well, I immediately twisted off the bleeder on the wheel cylinder on the rear here, so I did figure I was going to need to buy wheel cylinders, which I haven't picked up yet. Honestly, I just forgot. So, not a big deal. I was sure they were going to need to be changed anyway. So that's going to put a stop to that for now. So I'm going to tinker around with some other stuff, and then I'll bring you guys back when we're on to something super duper exciting. So I figured we'd start disassembling the front brakes. So these GM calipers have these Allen head bolts. The bolt is actually the slider that the caliper slides on. So, that one actually cracked loose, no problem. Nice. Just never know what kind of fight you're going to have with these old cars. So never let your caliper hang from the rubber hose. I've seen guys do that where they let it droop on this thing. These will get all broken up inside, and then they obviously don't work properly. So I'm just pulling this apart. I mean, I might see if we can lube up the pistons before we get these brakes working, but I figured, oh man, it feels nice. Figured we'll throw the rotors on the brake lathe and maybe clean those up, just since I'm out here. Still have a little time to work on it. I'm surprised how nice those bearings feel in there. I bought new wheel bearings. Just in case you're not familiar with these. So there is an oil seal here on the inside of the rotor, and then your inner bearing, and then a bearing race, obviously, and then the same thing on the other side. But there's no oil seal on the outside. Now, this all looks to be in really good shape. The bearings feel good. There's lots of grease in here. The spindle looks okay. See a little bit of heat scoring on it, or that might even just be from it sitting so long, the bearing kind of making marks in it. Since I do have new seals for this, I'm going to go ahead and pop these ones out and get that bearing out of there. Well, I'd be repacking the bearings anyway, so. Oh, that seal loose, so there's the oil seal. Inner wheel bearing. And yeah, it's always good to see that there's lots of grease in there, so this must have been somewhat looked after. Okay, so I've chalked up that rotor on the brake lathe. Now, obviously, you probably don't own a brake lathe. I got lucky with this. A local dealership had it on the buy and sell for $200 because they just didn't use it anymore. So I figured, since I have a little bit of experience doing this from 30 years ago when I was a kid working in an automotive shop, for $200 I would grab it and just use it for my own stuff, and I'm glad I did. there is our freshly machined brake rotor. So typically when you do that, that's when you would put new brake pads and stuff in. These have tons of life left in them, so I'm just going to run them. And this is a low budget deal after all. So it is hot as heck in here. It's like 9 zillion degrees outside today. So I think I'm going to call it for now. When we come back, we'll probably do a drum if anyone's interested in kind of seeing how that goes down. In the meantime, not right now, but I'm going to get the other side done. I'm going to pick up some rear wheel cylinders and then I'll be back. Maybe not today. Okay, it's the next day. I've got the front brake rotors all machined down. I ran to the auto parts store yesterday at the end of the day and grabbed some new wheel cylinders. If you're not familiar with drum brakes, I mean, these are super simple. So the wheel cylinder is here. These pistons push out the brake shoes, and they push against the drum to stop your car. So I want to show you guys, I already loosened off the brake line on the back, but I'm just grabbing this brake line just for reference because it's hard to see in there. So on these old cars, usually, you see the way that tube nut should spin on the brake line? They're usually rusted to the brake line. And this one was super rusted. So take a pair of vice grips and lightly clamp your brake line. Obviously you don't want to squish it when you're undoing it. So that way you're holding that brake line in one place as you break this free. Take your time. I used heat and penetrating oil about 4 times. I'd warm it up, quench it with the oil, tried to work it, it wasn't going. I did it again and again and again until finally I got it loose. And then once I got that nut spinning on the brake line back there, I just added more oil and kind of kept working it. So that brake line is loose, that wheel cylinder is loose. If you haven't done drum brakes before, they're really simple. The way I learned, 30 years ago was just do one side at a time. You take the side apart, if you can't quite remember how it goes back together, well then you use the other side for reference. I mean, now we have cell phone cameras, so you can just take a bunch of pictures too, but back then that wasn't an option. We had to scribble it on the cave wall with a rock. So, brake tool, these are super cheap. You don't need it, you can get away with taking these apart with vice grips or pliers or whatever. As you can see, these just hook around the spring. Now, I'm probably not even going to have to take this right apart because all I want is that wheel cylinder out. So I might not even take the shoes right off. Oh, actually no, scratch that because we're going to need to lube up the adjuster. So we will take it right apart. And I always too just kind of put things in reference the way it came apart, just to keep it a little easier. Oh yeah, there is a tool for these guys. I don't think I actually... Well, I do have one. I didn't grab it. But anyway, vice grips work fine on these. Again, not too tight because you'll squish all this. And you can buy this kit too with all the new hardware for your brakes. And for the couple of bucks, it's usually worth it. So these I usually just hold the pin on the back. I'm not quite getting enough turn there. Come on now. There we go. So they're just on that pin back there, which, holy moly, that one is rusty. I think I actually have a bunch of new stuff, so well, we'll see. Might just put it back together just like this. Can always upgrade later. For now, I just want to get this car going. And David Freiberger said, Don't get it right, just get it running. Actually, I don't even need to unhook that e-brake. So yeah, pretty simple. You can take them apart basically like that. I'm going to pull that adjuster out of there. Oh, okay, well now it's all apart. So these guys should all spin freely. Yeah, you can see I can't even turn that. So we're going to need to get that broken loose, and then we'll put a bunch of anti-seize in here. So this is what adjusts your brakes. It'll automatically spin these out when it needs it, which puts a little more pressure on your brake shoes as they wear down. So anyway, I'm going to get in behind to finish taking that wheel cylinder off. Come back and have a look. Well, it turns out the new kid at the auto parts store did give me the wrong wheel cylinders. So figured we'd move on to machining the drums. So thought I'd show you guys in case, you know, I don't know, maybe someone's interested. So you can kind of see how crusty and rusty they are inside. So we're going to clean those up nice. Here's a freshly machined brake drum. Look how nice that is. Like I said, it just seems like nobody does these anymore. I mean, wherever you are, maybe a parts store or brake shop will still do them. I don't know, brake shop in town here probably does, but yeah, it seems like we've gone to where everyone just buys new drums and rotors, where, you know, we used to get these done for like 20 bucks each. And just a better way to go with the original equipment rather than putting the Chinesium parts on. But anyway, I'm going to do the other side, and then maybe we'll move on to putting the new bearings in the front rotors. Okay, so drums and rotors are all machined. So we're going to be putting some new wheel bearings in these rotors. So first thing's to drive out the old races. All right, so there's a bearing race. Now, these are actually in good shape, but I had already bought new bearings, so figured we may as well install them. So I'll pop out the other side, and then I'll show you guys my trick for putting new ones in. Okay, so here's my tech tip for putting new races in. So, as you know, heat expands metal, cold contracts metal. So I've got the bearing races in a bucket of ice. I would usually put them in the freezer for a few hours, but I didn't think ahead on this one. So I'm going to warm this brake rotor up. Not a hell of a lot, just want it hot. The propane torch is pretty safe. It's not like using oxygen acetylene where you could get them too damn hot. And then I just go to my 3/4 inch drive socket set and find a socket that's going to fit nicely to drive that new race in. So it doesn't happen all the time, but I'm not kidding where I say I've taken these and they've just dropped right in. And then as the metal goes back, they cinch right up in there. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if this is going to work. Well, definitely didn't fall in. Let's go in. So you just want to drive that race in until it's seated. And you can see on the back side, but yeah, so that one's in, and that actually went in pretty easy, but like I say, I've had those things just drop right into place before. So I'm going to jump over and do the back side, and then we'll come back and put some wheel bearings in. See that one? I turned the camera back on just in case that happened. Look at that. That one dropped right into place. Didn't even have to hammer it. That doesn't happen very often, but now you can see that's already warming up. There's no way, or already cooling off, sorry. Well, warming up and cooling off. There's no way you're going to pull that back out of there. As that cools, it's going to cinch right down on it. And she's there for good. And of course, because I had these races in ice or water, you want to make sure you wipe them all nice and dry so they don't flash rust, but they're coated in oil anyway, so they should be fine. Okay, on to the other one. Now packing the new bearings before we put them in. I mean, everyone probably knows this one, but grease in your hand. And you want to keep working that grease until you see it come out the other side of the bearing. So I can see that it's made its way through all the way through all the rollers there, but there is no such thing as too much grease. There's the rear bearing in the rotor. We're going to grab the new oil seal. Oh, I didn't grab a big enough socket for that. Be fine just to tap this guy in carefully. Same idea, just seat it to the rotor. Don't put your greasy hands all over the freshly machined brake rotor, but I'll clean that off with some brake clean before we're done. Or before it goes on the car, I should say. So I'm going to do the same to the outer bearing, and then we'll get this rotor in place. So we're ready to slide the brake rotor back on. So I've just cleaned up the spindle really good. I just sprayed the backing plate with some of that black restoration spray. No reason other than to clean it up a little bit. So we'll slide that on there and seat that oil seal on there. Oh, hang on. Let's back up a little bit. In my haste of making a video, I like to coat the spindle. Okay, let's do that again. And I have cleaned the rotor with some brake clean. I'll clean the outside again. So there we go. Now that's on. I am going to jam a little more grease in this end. New bearing. That little plate. So the way I'll seat these new bearings, just snug that down. And then I'm going to back off to closest hole for the cotter key. Look at that. Beautiful. So I'm going to grab a new cotter pin to stick in there. They're over the other side of the shop. But yeah, and after that, we're pretty much ready to start putting the calipers and everything back on. But yeah, I'm going to do the other side. We'll come back for another look in a bit. Okay, back to the Trans Am. It has actually been, I think, 2 weeks since I took this thing apart. I have just not had time to work on it. I fooled around with it a little bit yesterday. Got this side put back together with a new wheel cylinder. Here's my cat. So we've replaced brake line, wheel cylinder. We've machined drums and rotors. Now I'm going to go over to the other side of the car with my cat, apparently. Going to change the wheel cylinder on this side, and then we'll be ready to see if we can get some brakes in this thing. I still don't know if the front calipers or the master cylinder are any good, but this is the next step, so I'm going to get at it. Okay, we've got that all assembled. So before I put the drum on, so because I machined the drums, didn't put new brake shoes in because, I mean, these are in good shape. So I'm just going to sand them clean with a piece of 80 grit sandpaper. I mean, they're going to clean up pretty good on that new surface anyway, but just to take any glazing off of there, just so we're going to get seated back in there nicely. Now, I would like to be putting, all new parts, and eventually I want to do, new stuff and new shocks and go through the whole front end and do all the ball joints and tie rod ends and all the safety stuff, all the bushings. I want to make this, kind of drive like it did when it was new is my ultimate goal, but let's face it, I'm a working stiff. I can't afford to do it all at once. So, next, we're going to stick the brake drum on. Again, I'm not giving you a whole tutorial on drum brakes because I'm no expert, but I've done lots of them. So, oh, one more thing. I'm going to clean up this surface in here where the drum fits, because that's kind of what binds them up a lot of the time. Because we're going to be sliding the drum on and off a few times. Nice to have that slippery in there. I'm just going to put a little never seize around, or anti-seize around there. So what you want when you set these up, oh, that's just grinding a bit on the backing plate. You want to feel a drag on the brake shoes. Now you can get in from behind and adjust this adjuster to push the shoes out. I'm just going to do it from here. So you want to just keep going until you just feel that little bit of drag of the brake shoes against the drum, and then your brakes are set. So I'm just going to do a couple other little things. Oh, actually, I need to put the calipers back on. So we'll go up and do that. And then we're almost ready to test and see if we have brakes. So looking back here where we finished off, I remember we set the preload on the bearings. I know I hadn't put cotter pins in yet. So those are important. dust caps. I like to just scoop a little more grease into them before putting them on. And you know, always use the proper tools. So these bolts, the caliper does actually, or pins, bolts, caliper does slide on them. So we want to clean those up really good. Some anti-seize. Getting down to the bottom of her. Let's start with the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna go smack the other side together and we'll be ready to test. So I've cracked the bleeder on the left rear wheel cylinder. Now we're gonna use this adjustment tool, actually. So here's one of my tricks for bleeding brakes alone. I usually try and find something just the right length that I can push the pedal down and it'll stay down for a minute. So I've done that just to push some fluid to this rear wheel cylinder. Just going to tighten back up now. As I said, I have no idea if this master cylinder is any good. Well, I am seeing bubbles in the master. No pressure yet. I'll keep fooling with this and I'll put the camera back on when we're making progress. Well, I've been fooling around with her for a little bit here. And I'll be darned if it doesn't, still a little spongy. But we have a brake pedal. So I'm going to do a couple more little things here and then maybe we'll drop her down off the jack stands and give it a try. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if we have brakes. better. So once I get a buddy over, we'll get that. But now let's go take her around the yard. Fine tuning, but they work. Gear. That was first. There we go, third gear. I should hold the steering column up properly. Yeah, nice to have brakes. Put her through the gears a little bit. Still running out of fuel a little there. Whew. A lot of dust in here. Now that we got brakes, you know what that means? Brake stand. Okay, everybody. Thanks for watching my ridiculous video. My dog is barking. We still have tires left. I think we're good. Yep. Yep, we got a few more burnouts left in there. Okay, maybe not. Anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. I promise it's free. Come back for the next one. You never know what it's going to be. Thanks, guys.